Hello, I'm Michael Merino, and I'm a DC-based playwright.
Hello, my name is Allyson Currin, and I'm a playwright and actor.
Hello, I'm Maurice Martin, and I'm a playwright. Please join us in conversation.
I've been in theater since I was a little kid, you know. It's just always, it was the go-to place. And the thing I wanted to do was to be an actor at the time, and writing came along later. You know, we were talking about this a little bit beforehand. I think there's something that's really wonderful and unique about the theater. What is wonderful and unique about the theater is the communion, that you're in a room with a bunch of people and you're all having the same experience. And when you have that chemistry, either as an actor, as a writer, as you know, as a designer, as a director, with the audience and with the story, and the audience is really there with you, it's a very exciting feeling. It's a very galvanizing feeling, and there's just nothing quite like it, you know. And you can, as an audience member, I feel like I can always tell when the actors and the team on a production is really of the same spirit. You know, they're all in there together. They're all in there. They're caring. They're swinging. They're having a great time. I can always smell those productions. You know, you can tell, and you can tell when people are just clocking in. You can, and that shows. So I think that, you know, the goal is to get that chemistry and that communion with the audience.
I think my experience is exactly the opposite. I didn't come to theater until very late when I was in graduate school. But I was at a school where we had a very good theater program, and I went there because I needed to take a date somewhere, and I saw a production of A Day in the Death of Joe Egg and was just blown away because it's kind of what you said, the intensity of it, the intimacy of it, and because it's theater and it's people, you suspend your disbelief in a different way, and it's able to kind of take you out of your everyday situation and put you into the lives of these characters.
Yeah. What about you? You asked the question.
I knew you were going to ask me to explain myself. I like seeing the parts behind the curtain. I mean, film is one thing, but you're directed to see this, and the music and all of that is very manipulating. What I like about the theater, one is the chance elements that happen. You can look where you want to look. You get to see the spontaneity and the ephemeral nature of what you're watching. That your experience with the show is completely different, even if you came back the next day and saw the same show, or saw it with a different cast or a different interpretation. So I like the freedom to interpret. And also from the actors and the production, the design of the show. I'm more interested in seeing how the thing is put together, so I like to see something a little bit more, less polished. I like to see something in rehearsal. I like to see the process and how they get to the show. And of course, I like to see the strike when it's all taken down.
The strike kills me. The strike kills me because, you know, you're sitting there, you put all your blood, sweat, and tears into whatever the project is, and then, you know, and it's so special, especially as a playwright, you know, it's just so magic, and then they just come in and start tearing stuff down, and you're like, no, this is my church, what are you doing? Well,
Michael's last production was Titanic, and they had a really nice set, and a lot of it was painted onto the floor, and I was thinking, how did they just paint over the floor again?
It was sad. Yeah. All that work put into you know, a 5-week run of a show, and it's now painted gone. Black. It's all gone. It's erased.
It's all gone. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about first productions. I'll go first. Mine was at the old Source 10-minute play competition that used to, and well, they still have a 10-minute play competition there, but this was back in the day when it was run under a different organization, and it was a short piece with 2 actors, and it was called Candy Flowers in a Card, and really opened my eyes to what it felt like to have that connection with the audience when, as you and I were talking about, when a line lands the way you hoped it would land.
Yeah. So what year was that, by the way?
That was in, I'm really dating myself, 1997.
I had just stopped working at Source at that point.
Oh, is that right?
I was on staff there for a while.
Oh, okay.
When I first got to town, I was, very cool.
Yeah.
What about you, first production?
It would have been a college production, and then I rewrote the play when I moved to New Orleans. So I started with a group of theater folks in New Orleans and did a lot of experimental, avant-garde, self-written pieces. So that would have been maybe 1998. I'm sorry, no, 89.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, mine was also at Source, actually.
Oh.
I was not a playwright. I was an actor, and my MFA is in directing, and I was teaching this abroad at this American school, and I wrote this play just because I was depressed about something. And I was missing my best guy friend who always knew exactly what to say. So I just wrote this dialogue in between us, and it turned into this play. But I didn't consider myself a playwright. And I did a 10-minute segment of it in the festival. And the artistic director said, "Hey, I like that. Let me see the whole script." And then they picked it up and produced it. And the same kind of thing, that it was just this magic night where, everything that I'd ever studied and worked for came together in this one evening where everybody was in sync, the actors and the audience and everything. And I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Took me till I was 27 to figure that out, but it's good when it comes. What kind of things do you like to write?
I like to write pieces where I'm playing around with tropes from other art forms and kind of reassembling them into oddities. The show that I had in Fringe last summer was RUX, and it started out as a hope opera, which is kind of, it's a theater fundraising event, but the structure is as a soap opera. You've got a series of installments every week, and you come back and you find out what's happened to the characters and things like that. So it was kind of taking a lot of soap opera elements and sticking them together in a new way to tell a different story. So, and that's kind of continuing with the work I'm doing right now. I'm doing a mashup for Landless Theater Company this summer, which is going to be, it's called The Walking Fred, which is a mashup of Fred Flintstone and The Walking Dead. And,
which is so cool.
And so obviously I'm playing around with tropes from both of those, the cartoon from the 1960s and the modern zombie genre, and kind of mashing those together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I enjoy.
Mashups are fun.
Mashups
it's
are
kind
fun.
of a trendy little thing, but they're really fun to
do.
do.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I think we're hitting the peak of the mashup trend right now.
Yeah, well, it gets you out of your little your own toolbox, which is always a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. What about you?
Oh, well, I like to write, I don't like to write your traditional play that has a plot or characters, so which makes my plays difficult to market. I'd like to write about an idea. My last play, Hemispheric Dysfunctionalism in the Cortical Titanic. So I like to write plays that have a lot of words and 48 letters in the title. So
it's a requirement. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Actually, I think I checked. Heiner Mueller has a play of equal length, but he has some slashes and dashes in his titles. So
that's cheating.
He is cheating, and German requires it. But so I like plays about ideas, and characters may embody the ideas, and we wrestle with the ideas and see how the idea evolves. Not so much to see, with the conflict this character had, does it get resolved, what else is happening in the story. And I don't like the types of plays. I can go all day telling about the types of things I don't like, but I just like ideas that challenge my mind, plays that I'd like to see as a paying customer. And the last play before that was about evolution and Charles Darwin, and before that was a play about language and how words mean different things, text and subtext is what that play, and both of those were produced at the Capitol Fringe.
I like plays that deal with language, and I think there are a lot of plays out there right now that don't. I think there's a lot of very gimmick-driven stuff right now that is kind of afraid of language, which I don't think audiences are scared of language. I think audiences like it, and I like to play with language as well, and that's something that kind of concerns me. If you're not going to have fun and be delicious with the language, then why mess with it,
Well, you've got Caesar and Dada coming up at the WSC. Tell us how you play with language in that piece.
How do I play with language in that piece? You saw a reading of it. How would you say? I'm so inarticulate.
No, what I liked about that play is that you're playing with ideas. You're taking, a play. I won't explain all of it because I hear it's changed much since I first saw it, but I was really intrigued by it. Taking a production, a stylistic approach to Julius Caesar, and the intrigue between the characters and the conflicts and the interpretations and the goal and what is truth and the arts, and so all of that was very exciting. And so I'm looking forward to seeing your production of it, regardless of how you've rewritten it. But I think it's really strong, and it's the kind of play I would go see. So
thank you.
I can't wait.
Yay, that's a compliment. I tried to explode the narrative a little bit more. It's a play about dislocation and Shakespeare and the Dada movement at the end of World War I. It's it's a wacky piece. I really like it though. It's fun, but it plays with language like in that way that I just like to get in there and twist meaning and tinker with sort of take a prismatic approach to language as opposed to sort of, just sitting down and clocking in dialogue.
Right.
I don't see a lot of playwrights doing that though these days. Do you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of new work is very straightforward.
A lot of kitchen sink dramas.
A lot of kitchen sink, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with kitchen sink realism. I've got some too, but but it can get tired. It can get tired.
Let's talk spectacular failures.
Well,
just the crashes and the burns.
My failures tend to be plotting. They just kind of die.
The slow, agonizing,
muddy,
right,
painful failures. I don't think I've had a spectacular flame out. Have you?
Oh well, we shared a spectacular failure. We were in a playwriting group that was met at Woolly Mammoth. It was called Playground.
I'd rather not talk about it.
Well, I'm going to talk about it, so you can just sit there. And we were going to do a play in a day over at in Bethesda, and so we teamed up with another playwright from the same group, Lisa Voss, and spent, the way that works is you get your idea on a Friday night and you spend all Friday night writing, and then you hand it off to the actors and directors to rehearse. And so we spent the whole night eating chocolate-covered coffee espresso beans and
sneezing at the hair of Lisa's dogs.
And produce a script. I'm not even going to say the name of the script.
Don't even talk about the play. No, that was a disaster.
Yeah, it was a disaster.
But what did you learn from it? Because failure is actually, I think, really useful.
Don't team up with Michael and Lisa.
Okay,
that's what I learned. Yeah.
Solo only.
Well, no, but I say that jokingly, but I think we've got different writing styles, and we thought, we'll just mush them together. But
we didn't have anything to drink. I mean, Lisa provided no alcohol or
That's
food,
true.
or we just.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Just sneezing and popping Benadryl. That's not a good way to write.
No, it's not a good way to write. So. Yeah.
I always tell my students, I teach at George Washington University as well for my day job, and I always tell my students, when they express their concern about something not working, I always say, well, what's the worst thing that you could do? Could you fall off the sage? Well, guess what? I did. In a production, it's like, it wasn't exactly open night, but it was close enough, and there was press there, and I fell off the stage, literally, and, bleeding all over my pretty white costume for the first
I'd see that.
scene.
I'd go to see that.
Yeah, it was interesting. But, it actually, I mean, as terrifying as that was, guess what? The show went on. I mean, I pulled myself together. Somebody handed me a handkerchief, and I just played the scene like this and just bled all over the place and just carried on anyway. And it wasn't that bad. I mean, failing is everybody's fear, but I think it actually, it's the stuff you learn the most from. It's, the constructive criticism is far more useful than those strokes that say, oh, you're wonderful, you're wonderful, you're wonderful. Like, those are never useful comments to me. I want to hear what didn't work.
Right.
Well,
you do both the writing and the acting.
Yeah.
Do they interfere with each other? Do they fuse each other? Have you ever appeared in one of your own plays?
Talk about spectacular failures.
Uh-oh.
I acted in one play of mine, and I found it really difficult. And it was mostly because I couldn't get out of my playwright head. I couldn't, because as an actor, you have to completely invest in whatever it is you're saying. If you can't believe it, then you shouldn't be saying it. And if you don't know how to believe it, you got to figure out how. And I was delivering lines like Arlington Independent Media, that was my line. The playwright in me was going, I've got to change that line. Like, that line just isn't working, and I couldn't shut it off. So I couldn't invest as an actor like I needed to.
Right.
And I think it showed. I think it really showed.
You couldn't stop being a playwright.
Couldn't stop being a playwright. Yeah. So I said never again. I'm going to keep it really clean, either just acting or just writing.
Yeah. The only time I did acting, of course, in college, but of late is when I had to fire an actor and I didn't have an understudy, so I had to step in the role. Unfortunately, it was a role I was capable of doing, but that's the only additional hat that I would do. So mostly in writing, I think I'm satisfied with what I've created, and I've directed a lot of my own stuff, and I've had great help from Carrie Rambo, who's directed a lot of my recent work. And she put it, I mean, it's good to turn it over to somebody you trust who has the same sensibilities that you do and understands your text. That's a great help in realizing what you hope to put on stage. I think, if anything, I can criticize myself, and I hope not to do again, is produce. I mean, you produce your smaller work, but to produce a big show, to handle the marketing, to pay for the insurance, and find the place to rehearse. I mean, fortunately, I took time off from work to do that. It was a time after the play closed. I was still taking time off to recuperate and add up all the receipts. But yeah, that's a totally different skill set. I possess some of the qualifications to do that, but that is a thankless job to produce.
It is.
And to do all that coordination logistics. So I don't think I did a bad job, but I don't think I did a great job in producing and doing all that behind the scenes work. It's almost as important as the product you see on stage. The audience showing up is dependent upon that. The actors being paid and getting your insurance and buying your costumes and hiring the designers and all of that. That's just a thankless job to produce.
It is. It is. Well, you threw out the word trust, which I want to talk about, because that's to me, that's the fundamental, I guess, requirement for any theatrical endeavor, that you have got to trust everybody on your team. And what does that mean for you with directors and with designers and with producers and with actors? Like, what is that trust relationship? I mean, I know I have very specific ideas about it, but are you dramaturgs? Don't forget dramaturgs.
Right. It just means basically that you can, speaks to what Michael just said, you can trust that something's going to happen, something is going to get done and get done well in your absence, so that you don't have to do it. You don't have to have your hand in every stage of the process. You can turn it over to someone. The director for my show last summer was Sun King Davis, who's in your next show, and I was very lucky to have him because I trusted his judgment. He really got the script. I could pass it off to him and not go to rehearsals and trust things would happen. And that's what it's all about, is to not feel like you're on the hook for every detail,
right.
And that other people are going to carry the ball and do something interesting and creative with it.
You can just be a playwright.
Yeah.
You don't have to troubleshoot everything.
Right.
Right.
Well, what does it mean to you?
It means somebody's going to tell me the truth, who's going to say, this is a self-indulgent piece of writing, or that I do not understand this, or I cannot make this work. Because I'm a technician as well as an artist. I respond to technical notes like that's not going to work. I think it's hard when you write something, you bleed on the page or put your heart on the page, however you do it, and we care about what we write, but you need that brave soul who's going to come in and say, is just going to speak truth to you and say, guess what, this is not of interest. This is not a big enough idea. This is not carried out. This is not executed elegantly, or whatever it happens to be. I just value the truth speakers because they're the ones I learned from. And I remember I had a great experience once with my very dear friend Melissa Flame, who's been in 4 of my plays now. She was doing a one-woman play that I wrote, and no, actually this wasn't that one. This was another. This was Learning Curves. That's what it was, at WSC. And there was a moment when I wanted her to. The character needs to cry, needs to fall apart, and I said, well, you can do that, right? And she's like, oh, I can do it. I can do it. But you want to protect that moment when you get another actor who can't do it. It has to be in the text. You have to write it in. I can generate whatever you want, but it's really not there in the words right now, Al, and you've got to write it in. And that was such a great thing for me to hear, protect myself in the words.
Well, what's coming up? Is Melissa in your next production? Or?
No, she's not. No, alas. Next is Benched at Pinky Swear with Renee Calarco's play Bleed. We're sort of one night, and then it's a rep of women playwrights, and Rachel Axler's Smudge is the other night. And then Caesar and Dada opens in June and runs July.
And that's at Washington
Shakespeare. WSC Avant Bard, as they're now rebranded. It's going to be at the Callan Theater at Catholic University.
And you mentioned your mashup. When is that happening?
Mashups are in June. I still haven't gotten the exact dates for that, but it's going to be at the Gala Theater and up in, Columbia Heights, I think? Columbia Heights. And it's going to be in rep with Landless's main stage production of Frankenstein, which is a musical prog rock version of Frankenstein. Right. So
cool.
yeah. So it should be interesting. We'll have the Flintstones in the foreground, and the background will be this Victorian castle-looking thing, I guess, or whatever.
Sign
Frankenstein.
Me up.
Yeah, I know. So should be fun.
Well, we were talking before about sort of the long dry periods when things aren't happening for you. I mean, playwriting is a very specific career and there are long gaps when you're not working and you have to promote yourself or find ways to galvanize yourself and write. What do you do when things aren't happening for you? Like, how do you stay creative?
I had a long dry spell, and I would make a point of doing Play in a Day up in Bethesda, which is an event where you go and you get a script on, or you get an assignment on Friday night. You have to write a script and hand it off to the actors on Saturday morning, and it gets performed Saturday evening. So that was a good way of kind of breaking that up. But sometimes if I'm having a dry spell, I just live my life. I just go do other, just do life stuff and let theater be for a little bit and then come back to it.
Yeah, I actually find the same thing. That I've always had long periods when I'm not writing, and then spurts of activity. And it used to really terrify me when I wasn't writing, because every single time I was just drying up. I remember when I was pregnant, I was like, I couldn't write anything. I was like, I'm never going to write another word. Motherhood is killing my career already. I'm not even a mother yet. But I've learned to kind of surrender to them, because they actually are, they're regenerative, I think. That you need those dry spells in order to have the ideas, in order to let your mind play. I think that's one thing that I know I don't do enough of, is just don't give my mind a task and just let my thoughts wander and just give myself playtime just to, be silly with my own brain. I find I don't do that enough. What about you?
I do a lot of reading, and I'll go to art museums, and there's a couple of magazines that I read a lot that really stimulate me. Cabinet, if you're not reading Cabinet, I urge you to. There's these great essays on things, inventories or color, and I found one essay about a list of jobs that were being privatized recently in Cuba. So there was a list of now approved jobs that you can now do without the government sanctioning it. So, I mean, things like that stimulate my mind about, this guy at one time was a government nuclear physicist, and now he's no longer at a job, and he's going through a list and trying in a HR situation. So, I mean, I've been playing around with something called Extra Normal, which is software where you can type in dialogue, and they have these different characters that you can render, and it's much easier than working with real actors. And you can choose the different accents.
And just as lively.
Free.
And free.
And you can post them on the internet, and many people will see them. But that was kind of cool, because it was stimulating to have this conversation. And I did the same thing with Squirrel. I started doing these podcasts about me talking to a squirrel, and I did about 30 or 40 of those and put them out there. And then I went to a workshop at the Flea in New York, and one of the pataphysics workshops that they have up there, and I figured out a way to knit all of those podcasts into a script between Charles Darwin and a squirrel talking. So there's, you never know what's going to be useful to you later. So I collect a lot of ideas for plays or short stories or silly things like the Extra Normal stuff, which maybe one day develop into something for the stage. So. Well,
that's cool though, because I like that a lot, because you never know where the ideas are going to come from, and I think that means being really, really receptive to detail. I mean, I know that in my case, I found a paragraph about an African American man born a slave in this country who ended up in the courts of the Tsar, and it was like two sentences about this guy, and that's kind of all they know about him, historically speaking. It turned into a whole play because I was just so fascinated by that, and you never know where the ideas are going to come from. Where do yours come from, generally speaking?
It's just kind of like they just kind of pop up. I mean, there's no specific place that I get my ideas from. I just kind of tend to, when I'm riding in the bus or swimming or doing something, just think of different scenarios and then file them away. Yeah. And then if I'm lucky, someone says, "Hey, I need a play on this topic," or "I need a play of this format." Then I pull it back out. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I remember once I was in this some cafeteria thing, and I was just reaching for a straw for my soda, and it was a box of straws, and it was the last straw in there. And I just started playing with myself. I'm like, because I had this character problem in this play that I was writing, this play, The Colony. It was a comedy, and I was looking at the straw going, it's the last straw. It's the last straw. And I was just kind of playing, like, why is it the last straw? Why can't there be another? Like, I just started playing in my brain, and then it turned into this whole thing where I could solve this major character problem by making taking that, you know, it's the last straw, that sort of phrase, and giving it to a character who takes everything very, very literally. And she like immediately solved this character problem just because I was playing with my brain with the last straw, the last straw. Like, that sounds stupid, but it turned into this whole thing that solved this massive problem with a character. And it was like a turning point for that entire script. So you kind of never know where the those little details are going to come from that can really help you and open up a problem in your own text.
Yeah, I had a dry spell, and my niece was graduating from college, and my nephew and I were talking on the phone, and her graduation was May 5th, and I said, "Oh, that's Cinco de Mayo. It's in Los Angeles. We should go dressed as mariachis to the graduation." And he and I played around with this idea, and then we pretended that the phone connection was bad, that he thought I said, "Let's go as Liberace," and I showed up as in mariachi costume, and he showed up in Liberace costume. And so then I wrote a one-act play about the silliness of that, with some deranged Rumsfeld speaker giving a speech to the graduates, and he's talking about all kinds of tinfoil hat stuff. So you never know where something is going to springboard into something.
Is there a line there, though? Is there a line when you use your own experiences and stuff? That's clearly not. But I mean, you know, have you gone too far with using your own personal stuff ever? Like, where's that border? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like with relationships that you have, with, you know, the facts of your own life.
Yeah, the play of mine that has been produced the most is called 3 Questions, and I just kind of like a gag moment in my mind of a man who's really depressed, and he is going to kill himself, and just before he's about to shoot himself in the head, he gets a phone call, and he picks it up, and it's something like very trivial, and it's the kind of gag is like, you know, he's doing this thing, and so he's interrupted by this very trivial thing. I just had it in my head for a while, and one day I decided to write it out as a play, and that was like the first few seconds of it, and then use that. But it put me in a comfortable spot because I had bouts of depression, and it was difficult to kind of like open up about what that felt like and what experience, you know, that was, and put it onto page. So it did feel like, you know, kind of letting people in a vaguely uncomfortable way, even though his situation is completely different from mine.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah.
But that's honest, and that.
But it's my most popular play. It's actually been published. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's truthful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yourself?
I don't know. I sort of feel like I just try to be truthful all the time when I write. And I don't know that I think that there's a line there. I think if it's truth, you got to tell it. What about you?
I don't dabble in truth. I dabble in
ideas.
I dabble, you know, artificiality. I deal in constructs. I deal in simulacrum. So to me, it's all contextual. If somebody finds truth in it and it's useful, that's great. And like I said, you know, it's fleeting. You see it again the second time, and it was truth yesterday. Now it's a lie. So that's how I function in my relationship to art. And so it changes over time. So I really don't claim to have some special message to solve the world's problems. So if you're coming to my plays looking for that, you'll be sorely disappointed. But hopefully you'll have a good time, and you'll be engaged intellectually, and you'll have some conversations with your friends afterwards and say, what the hell was that? And you'll try to pull meaning out of chaos, which is, for me, what life is about.